The morning started quietly. I was wiping coffee off the inside of the windshield at a gas station just outside Buffalo. The kids were already back in the car, arguing softly about who got the middle seat charger. My husband, Daniel, stood by the trunk adjusting something in the back. It was late spring. The air smelled like gasoline and wet pavement. We were about 40 minutes from the Canadian border. The plan was simple: drive up for my cousin's reunion in Ontario, stay 2 nights, smile through small talk, come home. Normal. Predictable. I slid into the driver's seat and pulled back onto the highway. The kids settled into their tablets. Daniel leaned his head back against the seat and closed his eyes for a moment. We drove in comfortable silence for a while. Trucks hummed past us. The road stretched out in that straight, almost hypnotic way it does near the border. I remember noticing how calm everything felt. Then Daniel sat up. "Turn the car around," he said quietly. I thought I misheard him. "What?" "Turn around, now." He wasn't loud. He wasn't panicked. His voice was low and steady. That was what unsettled me. I glanced at him. His face had gone pale, not sick pale, not tired, something else. "Why?" I asked. He didn't look at me. He kept watching the road ahead like he was calculating distance. "Please, just take the next exit." Daniel is not dramatic. He doesn't overreact. I've seen him handle a kitchen fire with less tension than what I saw in that moment. I didn't argue again. I took the last exit before the border. The ramp curved away from the highway, and as soon as we left it, I felt his shoulders drop slightly. The kids noticed. "Are we going the wrong way?" Our oldest, Mason, asked from the back. "We forgot something," I said. "What?" our daughter Lila asked. "I'll tell you later." Daniel stayed quiet. Too quiet. We drove another 15 minutes down a narrow road lined with trees. No signs, no traffic, just gravel shoulders and patches of sunlight through branches. "Pull over here," he said finally. It wasn't really a rest stop, just a small access road with no clear purpose. I parked. The engine ticked softly as it cooled. He unbuckled. "Stay here," he told the kids. Then he stepped out and walked to the trunk. I watched him in the rearview mirror. He stood there for a second before opening it. He moved slowly, carefully, like he already knew what he was looking for. After a moment, he shut it again and walked to my window. "Can you come out?" he asked. I stepped out of the car. The air felt heavier than it should have. He opened the trunk again. He didn't say anything. He just unzipped the red duffel bag my father had handed me that morning and folded back a sweatshirt. Inside, wrapped in clear plastic and tucked into a toiletry pouch, were several sealed packets. Not medication. Not anything harmless. I didn't need labels. My chest tightened, but I didn't raise my voice. I didn't gasp. I just stood there and looked at it. "With the kids in the car," I said quietly. He nodded once. I looked back toward the highway we'd just left. It was only a few miles away. If we had kept driving, we would have crossed the border with that in our trunk. There would have been questions, inspections, possibly handcuffs, and my children would have watched. I closed the bag myself and zipped it shut. "How did you know?" I asked. "When your dad handed it to you," Daniel said. The way he smiled, it didn't sit right. He paused. "And when your mom kept saying how nice it was that we were driving." I felt something settle in my stomach. Not panic, not yet, just recognition. I put the trunk down gently. Then I got back into the driver's seat and started the car. We drove. I didn't answer the phone when it began ringing 10 minutes later. I just kept driving, letting the screen light up and fade. And as the calls kept coming, I realized something I should have understood years ago. This hadn't been a mistake. This had been a plan, and I had almost been part of it. We didn't go back to the highway. Instead, I drove in a slow loop through side roads until the ringing stopped. Pine trees blurred past the windows. The kids had gone quiet again, absorbed in their screens, unaware that anything had shifted. Daniel rested his hand on the center console, not touching me, just close. "Let's take it back," I said finally. He nodded. Neither of us needed to explain what it meant. The drive to my parents' house felt longer than it actually was. I kept replaying the morning in my head. My father handing me the red duffel like it was nothing special. My mother standing on the porch smiling too wide. My sister waving from the driveway. They had been unusually cheerful. At the time, I told myself it was just reunion energy. Now it felt staged. We pulled into their driveway without calling ahead. The house looked the same as always. White siding, decorative flags by the door, a fake stone by the front step that hid the spare key. My father had bought it from a catalog years ago. I remember because he thought it was clever. Daniel got out first and opened the trunk. I stepped out slowly. I picked up the red duffel. It felt heavier now, though I knew it hadn't changed. I walked to the fake stone, flipped it over, and retrieved the key. My hands were steady. Inside, the house smelled faintly of coffee and something fried. It was empty. They had already left for the reunion. I set the duffel just inside the hallway. I didn't unzip it. I didn't move anything around. I placed it exactly as it had been given to me. Daniel locked the door behind us. We didn't leave a note. We didn't need to. Back in the car, I put the phone face down on the console and drove home. That night, after the kids were asleep and the house was quiet, I answered when my mother called again. Her voice was light, casual. "Hi, sweetheart. We were so worried. You disappeared." I let a few seconds pass. "Where's the bag?" she asked, still cheerful. "We dropped it off," I said. A pause. "At your house." The cheerfulness thinned just slightly. "Oh," she said. "If it was important," I added, "you should have taken it yourselves." There was no denial, no confusion, just silence. Then she said, "We didn't think it would be a big deal." I didn't respond. After a moment, she tried again. "We were in a tough spot. You know that." I kept my voice even. "You put something illegal in our trunk, with your grandchildren in the back seat." She didn't apologize. She didn't explain. She just shifted. "You wouldn't help us." There it was, the private school deposit for my nephew, the money I had refused to lend 4 months earlier, the slow freeze in their tone after I said no. They had framed it as support, a small favor, temporary. I had recognized the pattern and stepped back. Apparently, they had decided to move forward without me. "We're not doing this," I said. "What does that mean?" she asked. "It means don't call again." I ended the call before she could reply. For 3 days, it was quiet. Then they showed up at our door. No warning, no message, just the doorbell ringing mid-morning while I was folding laundry. I stepped outside and closed the door firmly behind me. My mother smiled. My father stood slightly behind her, hands in his pockets. "We just want to talk," she said. I crossed my arms. "We didn't think you understood," my father added. "Understood what?" I asked. They didn't answer directly. My mother tried a different angle. We were desperate. "You were reckless," I said calmly. My father shifted his weight. "It wasn't going to be a problem." "You don't know that," I replied. My mother's voice sharpened. "You wouldn't help your own family." "I protect my children," I said. There was no anger in my voice, just a statement. She blinked. "You're overreacting." "No," I said. "I'm responding." I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I just told them they weren't welcome at the house anymore. And for the first time in my life, I didn't soften the edges of that sentence. They left looking more irritated than remorseful. That told me everything I needed to know. 3 days later, I went to pick up the kids from school. They weren't there. The secretary smiled politely. "Your parents picked them up." My stomach dropped. I didn't argue with the staff. I didn't panic in front of them. I simply asked, "Did they show ID?" "Yes, they said you'd arranged it." I thanked her and walked back to my car. Then I drove straight to my parents' house. Inside, balloons were taped to the walls. There was cake on the counter, new toys scattered across the floor. My children were laughing. My mother was slicing cake like this was a birthday party instead of a line being crossed. I stood in the doorway and let the scene settle. It wasn't love, it was strategy, and this time, I didn't hesitate. "We're leaving," I said. The kids protested. My mother smiled sweetly. "Let them stay," she said. "They're happy." I looked at her evenly. "You do not pick up my children without permission." She opened her mouth, ready with a defense. I didn't wait for it. I gathered the kids, thanked no one, and walked out. As we buckled into the car, my mother called after me. "They'll come back to us," she said lightly. "They always do." I didn't answer, but that night, sitting on the edge of our bed, I realized something quietly and clearly. If I didn't change the rules now, she might be right. That night, after the house settled and the kids were asleep, I sat at the kitchen table with a legal pad. Daniel made tea, chamomile. He set the mug beside me and didn't ask questions. I drew a line down the center of the page. Left side, what happened. Right side, what we control. It helped to see it that way. On the left, I wrote, illegal items placed in our vehicle, border risk, school pickup without consent, repeated contact after boundary. On the right, I wrote, school authorization forms, door locks, call logs, documentation, relocation option. Daniel pulled his laptop toward him. Step 1, he said quietly. I nodded. Step 1, remove access. The next morning, I went to the school office in person. I asked for the pickup authorization forms. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't explain the full story. I simply said we were updating permissions effective immediately. Only Daniel and I, no grandparents, no exceptions. The secretary printed the new forms. I signed them. I asked for a copy. I placed it in a folder when I got home. Step 2, document everything. I exported call logs from my phone, screenshots of missed calls, voicemails saved to a secure drive. I wrote down dates, times, what was said. I wasn't building a case yet. I was building clarity. Step 3, secure the house. Daniel changed the locks that weekend. Not because they had a key, they didn't, but because I wanted the sound of a new lock clicking into place. It felt final. I also called our cellular provider and blocked their numbers permanently. Not just silence, a hard block. Silence is different when you choose it. A week later, my mother left a voicemail from an unknown number. Her tone was softer this time. You're overthinking this, she said. It wasn't what you think. I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded the voicemail to a folder labeled Records. 2 days after that, my sister emailed. Subject line, please. She said our parents were struggling financially, that I was escalating things, that the bag was misunderstood. I didn't argue over email. I replied with one sentence. They placed illegal substances in my vehicle with my children present. There is no misunderstanding. I attached nothing. I added no emotion. Then, I archived the thread. Daniel's company had an office in Asheville, North Carolina. We had discussed a transfer months earlier, casually. It had seemed unnecessary then. Now it felt practical. He reached out to his manager. The transfer was still available. I didn't rush the decision. I reviewed our mortgage documents. I checked rental prices in Asheville. I calculated school enrollment deadlines. I created a spreadsheet with timelines. It wasn't dramatic. It was administrative. One evening, while reviewing listings online, Daniel said, "We don't have to decide tonight." I know, I said. But I also knew something else. If someone is willing to risk your freedom once, they will rationalize it again. 2 weeks later, the school called. Not about pickup, about records. My father had contacted the office asking for copies of the children's files for family records. The school declined, thankfully. But that was the moment something inside me settled into certainty. This wasn't regret. It was persistence. I scheduled a consultation with an attorney, not to file charges, not yet, just to understand our position. The attorney reviewed the timeline. He listened quietly. "You did the right thing turning around," he said. "If you had crossed the border with that, it would have been very complicated." He explained jurisdiction, intent laws, how possession works in vehicles, how ignorance doesn't always protect you. I took notes. When I got home, I filed those notes with the rest of the documents. Daniel watched me close the folder. "You look calmer," he said. "I am," I replied. Because now this wasn't emotional. It was procedural. 3 weeks after the trunk incident, we listed our house. Not publicly at first. Quietly. Through a contact Daniel trusted. I didn't announce it to anyone. I didn't argue with cousins who left passive messages. I focused on logistics, change of address forms, bank notifications, school transfer requests, secure digital backups. One evening, as I was shredding old paperwork, I realized something. For years, I had believed being responsible meant smoothing things over, bridging gaps, absorbing discomfort, but responsibility also means ending patterns, and patterns only end when someone refuses to participate. The house sold faster than expected. We set a moving date. I packed the kitchen first, then the children's rooms. I left the living room for last. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't tell extended family. I changed our forwarding address to a P.O. box in North Carolina. On the final day before we moved, a certified letter arrived. From my father. I held it for a moment before opening it. Inside was a short note. No apology, just a line. "You're making a mistake." I folded the paper back into the envelope and placed it in the folder labeled Records. Then I sealed the box. The moving truck arrived at dawn 2 days later, and for the first time since that morning near the border, I felt something steady beneath me. Not anger, not fear, just alignment. We weren't running, we were repositioning. The move itself was uneventful. Boxes, tape, the sound of furniture sliding across hardwood floors, our old house echoing a little more each hour. I cleaned the kitchen counters one last time before we left, wiped them down slowly, let the quiet sit. We didn't post about it. We didn't forward our new address to extended family. Utilities were transferred, mail rerouted to the P.O. box. The children knew we were moving closer to Dad's office. That was enough for them. Asheville was green and steady. The air smelled like pine and damp earth. Daniel's parents lived about 20 minutes away. They brought over a casserole the first night and didn't ask questions we weren't ready to answer. I appreciated that. The first week, I focused on systems. Step 1, new school registrations completed in person. Step 2, updated medical records transferred directly between pediatric offices. Step 3, online privacy settings adjusted, social media set to private, old posts archived. I also placed a credit freeze on our accounts. It wasn't something my parents had done before, but I wasn't assuming they wouldn't. Silence from them lasted about 10 days. Then the emails began again. Different accounts, different subject lines. Some angry, some pleading, some framed as concern. I didn't respond. Instead, I printed each one and added it to the folder. Daniel asked once, "Do you want me to handle it?" "No," I said calmly. "I'm handling it." Handling didn't mean reacting. It meant recording. About a month after we moved, I received a voicemail from a blocked number. My mother's voice, slightly rushed. "We just want to fix this. You don't have to blow everything up." I saved the audio file. I wasn't planning to use it, but I believed in documentation. 2 weeks later, a cousin called Daniel's parents. Apparently, my mother had been telling extended family that we had vanished and that she was worried about the kids. That was the first time I shifted from quiet protection to formal boundary. I scheduled a consultation with the same attorney, this time virtually from North Carolina. I explained the ongoing contact attempts, the school pickup, the substances in the car, the move. He listened, then said, "You have enough for a formal cease and desist. Not dramatic, not criminal charges, just a documented notice. I didn't rush it. I reviewed the draft carefully. It outlined specific incidents by date. It requested no further contact. It stated that any future attempts to access the children without permission would result in legal action. Clear, professional, calm. I signed it. It was mailed certified to both of my parents. No insults, no emotional commentary, just terms. When the delivery confirmation came through, I printed it and placed it in the folder. For the first time, there was no reply, no new numbers, no voicemails, just silence. A month passed, then 2. The quiet in our new house began to feel normal. The kids adjusted quickly. Mason joined a soccer team. Lila started piano lessons. Our youngest stopped asking when we were going back. Daniel slept more deeply. I stopped checking my phone first thing in the morning. Then, one afternoon, my sister emailed again. Subject line, emergency. I waited an hour before opening it. The message was longer this time, less defensive, more frantic. Our parents had been arrested, not for the incident with us, for something else. They had attempted to cross the border again, this time in their own vehicle. The substances were discovered during inspection. Charges, possession with intent to distribute, attempted cross-border transport of controlled substances. I read the email slowly. "They need help," my sister wrote. "They can't afford a good lawyer. You're the only one who can step up." I didn't feel anger. I felt confirmation. The attorney's earlier explanation replayed in my head. How possession works, how vehicles are treated, how intent is determined. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a pattern. I opened a new document and wrote 3 lines. We were almost used as cover. They continued the behavior independently. This outcome is the result of their own decisions. I closed the laptop. Daniel looked at me from across the kitchen table. "You don't have to answer," he said. "I know," I replied. And this time the silence wasn't defensive. It was deliberate. I didn't reply to my sister that night. I made dinner, helped with homework, loaded the dishwasher, normal movements, normal sounds, the hum of the refrigerator, the rhythm of our house. The next morning, I called the attorney, not to rescue anyone, to confirm facts. He pulled up the public records while we were on the phone. Charges were listed, bond amounts set, court date scheduled. It was all there, documented, time-stamped. "They were caught at the border crossing in Champlain," he said. "Secondary inspection, canine alert, search conducted." I wrote it down. No speculation, just information. "Are you legally responsible for anything connected to them now?" he asked. "No," I said. "Then you don't need to involve yourself unless you choose to." That word stayed with me. Choose. Later that afternoon, I replied to my sister's email. I kept it short. "I showed up once. I won't do it again." I didn't explain the red duffel. I didn't reference the cease and desist. I didn't defend myself. There was nothing to debate. She responded within an hour. "You're abandoning them." I read the message twice. Then I closed the laptop. That weekend, Daniel and I sat on the back porch while the kids played in the yard. The mountains were quiet. A light breeze moved through the trees. "Do you want to see them?" he asked gently. "No," I said. "Even now?" "Especially now." A week later, my father called from a detention facility. The call came through as restricted. I almost let it go to voicemail. Instead, I answered. His voice sounded smaller than I remembered. "Can we talk?" he asked. "We are talking," I said. There was a pause. They're making it sound worse than it is. I read the charges, I replied calmly. Another pause. You don't understand how hard things got, he said. I understand that you put illegal substances in my car with my children inside. Silence. That wasn't... I didn't let him finish. You had a choice, I said evenly. You made it. He exhaled slowly. They're asking for 4 years. I know. I thought you'd help. There it was again. The expectation. I didn't raise my voice. I helped when I turned around, I said. That's the last time. He didn't argue. He didn't apologize either. The line went quiet. I have to go, I said. I ended the call gently, not abruptly, just finished. Afterward, I didn't cry. I didn't pace. I wrote the date and time of the call on the legal pad I kept in the drawer. Then I closed it. 3 weeks later, the plea agreement was finalized. 4 years each. Not a dramatic sentence. Not lifelong, but enough. Enough time for consequences to feel real. Extended family messages slowed after that. It's difficult to argue with court documents, with signed pleas, with official records. Facts leave less room for storytelling. My sister sent one final message. I hope you can live with this, I replied with one sentence. I already am. Then I archived the thread. The confrontation never happened in a courtroom between us. It happened through paperwork, through boundaries, through silence chosen carefully, and that was enough. The official paperwork arrived about a month later, not to us directly, but through public records that my attorney forwarded as a courtesy. Sentencing documents, case numbers, dates, signatures, 4 years each, federal custody. I read the documents slowly at the kitchen table. The language was dry, structured, clear. Possession with intent to distribute. Attempted transport across international border. Plea agreement accepted. There were no emotional words in the file. No mention of family. No mention of grandchildren. Just facts. I appreciated that. Daniel came in while I was reviewing the pages. He didn't ask what they said. He could tell by the stillness. It's final? He asked. Yes. He nodded once. That night, I put the folder back into the filing cabinet. Not hidden, not displayed, just stored. Life continued. The kids finished their first semester in their new schools. Mason scored his first goal in a real match. Lila performed a short piano recital. Our youngest stopped asking about Grandma's house, small milestones, quiet progress. One afternoon, while sorting mail, I received a letter forwarded from our old P.O. box, from my sister. It was handwritten this time. She wrote about visiting them, about how small the visiting room felt, how they looked older, how they said they still believed we had overreacted. I read that sentence twice. Still believed. That was when I understood something fully. This wasn't about desperation. It wasn't about misunderstanding. It was about entitlement, the belief that other people exist as solutions. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in the folder, not as evidence anymore, just as closure. A few weeks later, I received a call from a federal investigator. Routine. He said they were reviewing any potential associates connected to the case. My name had appeared in phone logs. I answered calmly. I explained the timeline. I referenced the attorney consultation. I described the red duffel incident briefly and factually. He thanked me. That aligns with what we have, he said. There were no follow-up questions. When I hung up, I felt something settle completely. Third-party confirmation. Not just my version, not just our records. Official alignment. Daniel found me sitting quietly afterward. All good? He asked. Yes, I said, and I meant it. Over time, the calls stopped. The unknown numbers disappeared. Extended family adjusted to the new reality. People tend to quiet down when legal systems speak. One evening, Daniel and I reviewed our savings accounts. Retirement contributions, college funds for the kids, Numbers. Predictable. Stable. The contrast wasn't lost on me. I used to think responsibility meant absorbing chaos. Now I understand it means building systems that prevent it. We didn't celebrate the sentencing. We didn't discuss it with the children. We simply continued. Soccer practices, piano lessons, work schedules. Peace is quieter than drama, but it lasts longer. And eventually, the red duffel stopped appearing in my mind when I closed my eyes. Not because I forgot, because it no longer had power. The consequences were not created by me. They were triggered by choices that weren't mine. And once that truth felt steady, there was nothing left to argue with, only forward. This morning, I wiped down the kitchen counters after breakfast. The windows were open. Cool air moved through the house. Daniel had already left for work. The kids were finishing cereal and arguing about who forgot to put the milk back in the fridge. Normal things. I loaded the dishwasher, straightened a stack of mail, watered the plant near the sink. It needed a little more light, so I moved it a few inches to the left. Small adjustments. Peace feels like that sometimes. Not dramatic, just steady. It's been over a year now. We don't get calls from unknown numbers anymore. No forwarded messages from cousins. No updates beyond what shows up in public records. The legal process ran its course. Sentences are being served. Time is passing the way time does, evenly. I don't check the folder often now. It's still there in the cabinet, labeled, organized, complete, but it doesn't call to me. Last week, Mason asked if we could visit Canada someday, just to see the falls. I smiled. Maybe, I said, and I meant it. The border no longer feels like a threat. It's just a line on a map again. Sometimes in the evenings, after the kids are asleep, I sit on the back porch and listen to the trees. Daniel will join me with 2 cups of tea. We don't talk about the past much. There's nothing left to resolve. Boundaries did what arguments never could. Distance did what forgiveness alone could not. And the quiet here belongs to us. A few months ago, a woman from our neighborhood asked me for advice. She'd found something in her brother's car. Something that didn't make sense. She didn't know whether to confront him or ignore it. I told her what I tell myself now. Document first, react second, protect your home. She nodded slowly. I recognized the look. The moment when clarity begins to replace guilt. That's usually where change starts. If you're listening and you've ever had to choose between keeping peace and keeping your family safe, I hope you know this. Calm decisions can still be firm ones. If this story felt steady to you, go ahead and like the video. Subscribe if you'd like to hear more conversations like this. And tell me in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is where you are right now. I always find it grounding to see how far these stories travel. 2 of our most popular stories are about to appear on your screen. If you're not ready to leave yet, they'll be there. For now, I'm going to finish my tea.